Okay, so welcome back. We're going to start with our third lecture on the medium of exchange. The first lecture, we talked about the division of labor, the depth of the division of labor, the benefits that we acquire from the division of labor. What binds us together is the benefits of the division of labor. What binds us together in the marketplace outside of our family, tribe, the catalectic market order is glued with one another. Harmony is created because of the benefits of the division of labor. So far we've already we already explored the barter economy, right? The barter exchange system. So I said the first lecture today was about the division of labor, the social division of labor. We talked about Max Weber, about the Protestant Reformation. We talked about Emil Durkheim, minimum, maximum division of labor, tribal, etc., catalectic division of labor. So, and human beings eventually discovered that the barter system is ineffective, is inefficient because of the double coincidence of wants, right? So there emerged in the marketplace a medium of exchange. The barley was, historical records, written records tell us that barley in the year 3000 BC was used as a medium of exchange. So that was the barter economy. We talked about the emergence of the gold standard. The most marketable commodity was gold. It has all the desired characteristics. Gold is divisible, it is transportable, it's durable, right? We talked about why diamonds didn't play the role of the medium of exchange. And we also examined fiat currency, the emergence of fiat currency out of the necessity of the states, right? Governments, they want to finance wars, they want to expand, they want to finance government projects, and fiat currency emerged during World War I and eventually during the Great Depression as a way to, mitigate the depression. We talked about the boom bust cycle. Today, in this lecture, I would like to expand on the medium of exchange and talk about the international gold standard. I would like to talk about the dollar becoming the world medium of exchange or world reserve currency in 1944 under the Bretton Woods agreement, and eventually in 1971 when the US, right, went internationally fiat. International fiat means not even foreign countries could bring their dollars and ask for their gold, okay? So let's talk about the emergence of the international gold standard and the dollar being the gold, international gold or international reserve currency. Backed by gold, that was the agreement, that the dollar is international reserve currency, but it must be backed by gold. So as international trade expanded, globalization is taking place in the 20th century. Most governments didn't trust one another. So I want to talk a little bit about the history, how the dollar emerged to become the world reserve currency. Why, how, right? So most governments didn't trust one another, right? At the end of the World War I, World War II, eventually. So mid 20th century, for example, just to, explain it, let's assume that Thailand, right? A person in Thailand, let's say, they want to buy a, VinFast. Vietnam is making cars nowadays, right? So in Vietnam. So if someone in Thailand wants to buy, if Thailand wants to buy a car from Vietnam, right? So they will pay in Thai baht. That's the Thai currency. And imagine that the next day, the Thai government does what? They inflate the Thai baht. So when they inflate, that means they print more of it. So what happens, right? To the Vietnamese, when they're holding Thai bahts because they exchanged the car for Thai baht, now the Thai government is printing money. So the money that they have in their possession is losing value. So governments around the world didn't trust each other's currency, right? A government could depart, another government would come, and then they say, we're not using this currency anymore, there's a new currency. It happened in the US. The dollar is not the first US currency. Before the dollar, we had what we call the Continental. We had another currency. Bankrupt, printed too much of it during the Revolutionary War, right? So government didn't trust one another, right? They didn't want to hold currencies of other countries in fear of that currency could get devalued, right? There is no legal recourse that they could take. They just lose wealth, they lose money. So something needed to be done. Most of the countries came rallying around the United States. So in 1944, right, towards the end of World War II, US is emerging victorious, financially dominant in the world, wealthy, prosperous, productive. So the dollar, there was an agreement that the dollar becomes the world's reserve currency. What does it mean? That all international exchange countries will accept the dollar as a medium of exchange because they believe they trust the stability of the dollar, right? So it became the world's medium of exchange, the dollar. But it must be backed by gold. That was in the agreement. So the US was viewed as more stable and credible than most of the countries in the world. So if you want to buy, you're Thailand, you want to buy a car from Vietnam, then you use dollars. You could use gold, but dollar has more liquidity. So you use your dollars and you get the car, and the dollar became the world medium of exchange, petrodollar, or the most dominant medium of exchange. So all the countries in the world, they have what in their reserves? Dollars. They have some gold, but they also have dollars in their reserves. So central bank held all these reserves dollars, and this also they're signaling stability of their countries towards the rest of the world, that they're holding not only gold but as well as more dollars. So all the currencies in this environment were pegged to the dollar. So there was an exchange rate that was established. A fixed exchange rate initially was established. All the currencies were pegged to the dollar, and the dollar was pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. Okay? So all the currencies in the world are pegged to the dollar, and the dollar is pegged to $35 an ounce of gold, and any new dollars in the world could be redeemed. So if we remember, if I talked about the window of convertibility of the dollar to the gold, internationally that window was open until 1971. So in a sense, the Bretton Woods Agreement created an international gold-backed, right, monetary system. Now, from the 1944, since the dollar became the world reserve currency, the US, I say it, rhetorically, was cheating in the sense that they were printing more dollars than there were gold in the world, okay? So they began printing more and more and more, and by 1971, when we actually went this gold standard, right, the US had almost, the US had $10 billion in gold, but it had issued $60 billion, right, dollar currency. So there was more dollars than there was a gold. So by 1971, the rest of the world suspected this. They said, wait a minute, there's too much liquidity. We don't have the gold. We want our gold back. So the countries around the world, they rushed to the US. And in particular, France sent Navy ships. They sent ships, military ships, to New York, demanding that the US government redeems the gold. They gave us the dollars back, and they wanted to take the gold, okay? So there was a gold run in the world, realizing what the US was doing throughout this inter-year between 1944 and 1971. Now, I want to go back in time. When we talked in 1933, right? All the gold that your great-great-parents deposited in the money warehouse, they took paper money in return, right? And then eventually, post-1933, you went to the bank, you gave the paper money, and you said, I want my gold. They said, no more gold. We went off the gold standard. Where is the gold? What happened to all the gold? Well, I mean...
You went overseas.
Perhaps. But the claim, the official claim, what is the official claim? You want to sit over there? Fort Knox, Kentucky, Fort Knox. They spent millions of dollars protecting a building, right? People with machine guns protecting the gold deposits. Has anyone been in Fort Knox? No, no one has been. Ron Paul wants to get to Fort Knox. President, the governor of Kentucky. No one has been inside. No one has seen if there is gold or no gold. I don't think the gold is there. No one has seen it. Where is the gold? I don't know. I don't think it's in there. But nobody wants to open the doors and say, oh, like the gold is not there because it creates financial uncertainty in the world. But most likely the gold is not there. Question? Oh, okay. So okay, anyways, so now we're in 1971, you know, the 1944 to 1971, the US is printing more money. In a way, it's like cheating, counterfeiting, because the dollar was supposed to be backed by gold. But countries realized that, and then they all wanted, there was a gold run, was underway. So the Bretton Woods obviously like lasted for about 27 years till 1971, when President Richard Nixon in 1971 said what? We are doing what? We're closing the window of convertibility of the dollar to gold internationally. It was closed domestically, now 1971 internationally. Murray Rothbard, right? Murray Rothbard, what has government done to our money? He says this was the greatest default in history. Defaulting, right? The greatest default in history, when the US refused to honor its obligation and you know, its international obligation and redeem the dollars to gold. So international fiat money was born. International fiat money was born. Now, what happens when the United States, so now I would like to investigate the implications, right, of United States inflating the dollar internationally. We talked about the implications domestically, creating the boom bust cycle, right, creating bad inequality. But what about the international implications of inflating the money supply, right? I have a question. What is the biggest US export? What does the US export the most?
Dollars.
Dollars, inflation. The US exports inflation. That's the biggest export. So what is happening, do you think, internationally when the US is printing more dollars? An A student. What happens when the US...
He wasn't this good at us. You open your mouth once, and they all jump on you.
So what is happening to, think about a taxi driver in Bangladesh, a sumo wrestler in Japan, a fisherman in Pakistan, right? Maybe India. Pakistan is landlocked, right? Okay, but they have rivers and lakes. What is happening to their wealth when the dollar is inflating the money supply? All these countries hold in reserve dollars. They use dollars for exchange. So in a way, we're taxing the world. The US is taxing, when I say the US, I mean the government, you know, the Fed, which is the central bank of we're taxing the rest of the world. It's a form of taxation. We're imposing taxes on all of humanity. Everyone who's exchanging goods and services, international exchange, dollar is being used. You want to buy gasoline, it's exchanged in petrodollars, in dollars. In a way, they're being taxed. We're devaluing the money, that there is more money outside of the US dollars than in the US. So what we're doing is we're devaluing their currency. So there's an international form of theft or, you know, taxation. That's what the US is doing. It's exporting inflation. It's taxing the rest of the world. This is what we call a monetary domination. Okay, monetary domination. It's a way where one country dominates over other countries without war, right? Without conflict, without consent, but in a very subtle way. And that's what we get out of this monetary fiat money. Now, some of you may ask the question, well, why wouldn't other countries do something else? Why don't they just dump all the reserves, US reserves, and move on to another monetary unit? Right? I mean, they're not stupid. They were for a long time until they discovered what was going on. Right? So the question is, what could other countries do? And very little. As a matter of fact, no matter what the US is doing, even with the inflation, it is relatively still the stablest, right? The most stable and the most safest currency in the world still. So maybe the US is not cheating. The US is saying, we're providing a service that provides stability in exchange, and the price that you pay for it is inflation. Why should the US provide stability in a medium of exchange. It's providing a service. Countries don't trust one another. Otherwise, they dump the dollar. They use other means of exchange. But still, if they're using the dollar, that means the US is providing stability. And the cost of stability is that we're going to inflate our money. Some people view it from a different perspective, right? So that would be another alternative perspective to the rhetorical cheating, that we talked about. So the US is still the stablest, is the most dominant, is the safest. Finally, I want to talk about the market harmony. Still, it's creating discontent in the world. I mean, we see most of the wars that are happening. I mean, at its essence, it's an economic war. Many countries around the world got together and they want to come up with an alternative currency, which is BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Now more and more countries have joined, like there's 20, 30 countries that have joined. I think their collective GDP is larger than the G8 or the great 10 countries in the world. It's a big GDP, but it hasn't been successful. It didn't achieve the goals, the criteria they wanted to get there. It's slow. There are problems. It's in the working. It may not succeed. It may, Countries around the world are looking for alternatives, right? But nevertheless, this international fiat money is still creating chaos in the world. It's at the root of many problems, right? And all I want to say to conclude this is that market harmony does not lie in departments of diplomacy, world affairs. Harmony relies on market transaction. A sound money, a money that hopefully is neither inflationary nor deflationary, a money that emerges in the marketplace, not fiat money, not dominated, but it's an emergent. The marketplace have discovered computers, cars, airplanes. What's so unique about the medium of exchange that couldn't be provided in a competitive market environment? Its genesis, its inception was praxeonomic. It was, praxeologic. It was via human action, the most marketable commodity emerged as a medium of exchange, right? There's nothing unique about the medium of exchange. It's like any other service. We have market accountants. There'll be competitive mediums of exchanges competing in the marketplace, right? We'll talk more about the Walloon system, like theoretical system possibilities are out there. Money under the freedom principle. Hayek actually talks about money under the freedom principle, money, competitive money, not centralized money, right? So we'll talk more about money, decentralization of money. So diplomacy lies in a market-based monetary system, not in departments, in colleges, and not diplomacy and world. We don't need all of this, okay? You have sound money, then that solves a lot of problems in the world. I would like to spend a few minutes. I don't want to make it too mechanical, but nevertheless, it's money mechanics. How is fiat money created, right? The mechanics of what do you mean government is printing money? It's not like they just print money and then just throw it out. So what's the mechanics? What's the inner working of money creation? So there are a few steps. So step number one is that as any governments around the world, governments want to spend more than they have in tax revenue, right? They want to spend more because it's other people's money, right? It's called moral hazard. You socialize the cost, you centralize the benefits, right? You behave in we talked about in a previous lecture about when you wear your seatbelt, right? Then you drive faster, risk compensation, right? You take risks with other people's money. So the US government tells its treasury to do what? Sell IOUs, treasury bills. Treasury bill is a piece of paper. It says, the US government owes you $100. At the end of the year, it becomes $110, some interest rate included, and you exchange the good for the service. So exchange takes place. So the US government automatically becomes a debtor, right? So they issue papers and they get money. So they can spend it on wars and welfare programs and government projects. These treasury bills could be sold to individual, commercial bank, private smaller bank, investment banks, foreign governments. Most of the time it's foreign governments for stability we talked about earlier. They actually buy US treasury bills. Even the Fed sometimes, right? The government is different than the Fed. Even the Fed sometimes, it's called monetizing the debt. They buy treasury bills. Now the treasury collects all this revenue and they give it for government to, pay government expenditure. Now, how is the debt and the liability eventually retired? So at maturity, right, after 1 year, 5 years, 3 years, 3 months, etc. At maturity, right, you as a consumer of these liabilities or a bank, the Fed enters the market. So the Fed does that. They want to buy back the IOUs. They want to buy back the treasury bills. How does the Fed buys the treasury bills? Electronically. So banks are selling treasury bills, right? Commercial banks, let's say. So what the Fed does, they click a button and electronically the money goes into an account. It's an electronic money. Sometimes banks, during times of, for example, holidays, they can convert this electronic currency into paper money for liquidity, etc. But the root transfer of buying this wealth is electronic. At the moment they press a button, electronically funds are created out of thin air, we say it. Okay, even though the debt is on the government, but that debt is keep growing and growing and growing. We're, I think, over $30 trillion, which is more than the GDP of the US. Okay, we owe more than what we, value that we create in the US in 1 year. So trillions of new reserves are created. They are created out of thin air. The money base expands, and we talked about how this is tied to inflation, right? Inflation is creation of money. So that's the money mechanics. I have a soft end over here, but we have a little bit more time, maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay. We talked about the business cycle earlier. So, right. So just to sum up, the business cycle is a cycle that is created from government intervention and monetary inflation. These are the steps of the business cycle. We talked about the steps. Please, you can review it. These are the step cycle. Let's talk about a little bit about exchange rates, right? Exchange ratios. How are exchange? So initially, when the US became, under the Bretton Woods agreement, the US became the world reserve currency, right? All the currencies were actually packed. There was a fixed exchange rate between the world currencies and the US dollar. And then this was relatively tied to gold, backed by gold. So that's what a fixed exchange rate system is. That is a fixed exchange rate system. Was this stable? Did it last? And the answer is no, for several reasons. It was difficult to maintain. Nowadays, most of the countries, they have what we call a floating exchange rate system, okay? So, for example, if the Thai government is importing more goods, so I'm importing more goods from the rest of the world, right? So that means to buy those goods, I'm going to demand what? More dollars. That means the value of the dollar is going up vis-a-vis the dollar of the value of the baht. Right? So to keep it fixed, right, the values are diverging because I'm demanding more baht. So my imports are more than my exports. Okay? If they're balanced, there's a fixed exchange rate. But if there's an imbalance, I'm importing more than I'm exporting, suddenly the dollar relative to the baht is declining in value because we're demanding more dollars in the markets. Okay, so the value of the baht is declining. So if you want to keep that even, then you need other monetary and fiscal policies. Okay, so for example, to maintain the stability and fixed exchange rates, a country's central bank can buy or sell its own currency. So when your currency is getting devalued, then what do? You go and you buy your own currency with dollars to inflate so that it becomes, you can maintain that fixed exchange rate, okay? That's how the origin of the exchange rate started. They wanted to keep it fixed. But as you realize, it wasn't sustainable. Relatively, very quickly, most of the countries in the world abandoned this system. And now we have what we call a floating exchange rate system. So in a floating exchange rate system, what determines the value of a currency is the demand and supply of that currency. Okay, if your country there is political stability, economic stability, right? The value of that currency increases. The U.S. value, currency has been going up. Depending circumstances change, the value goes down. So currencies are floating around the world, and we use the foreign exchange market, which is, by the way, the biggest exchange market. Okay, foreign exchange is a the biggest market. So this is the most common system that used today. Most of the countries are floating. There was a question earlier, Ethan. Did you have a question? Yeah.
I was just wondering if internationally there are any large economies and countries that are still on the gold standard or have some sort of gold standard like that, or is everyone fiat?
Most countries have abandoned gold standard. I mean, some countries like Russia is trying to be based more. They're buying gold. I mean, that's what BRICS is. The idea of BRICS is to bring back a type of a gold standard, but it's not just gold. It has other assets, like there's like commodities, a basket of commodities, and some of their. So there is a surge towards more. Many even Austrian economists, they prefer the gold. I don't. I think it's obsolete. I mean, is it better than fiat? Maybe yes, under certain circumstances, if the money is being used to wage wars and things like that. But gold is not the solution. As we talked about, it has a deflationary effect. It restricts exchange. There is shortage of liquidity. Market activity declines. The value of the medium of exchange is increasing. Entrepreneurs don't want to take any risks. So it has its shortcomings and theoretical flaws. So I wouldn't want to go back to the gold standard, even though even free market economists, they say it's better than fiat money in some circumstances.
I heard that if they remonetize the price of gold, technically it's at 35 still, but if they bring it to the spot price or even double that, that will hyperinflate the economy and be able to pay off all the debt.
Yeah, because we don't have enough gold. To match the liquidity that we have now. Yeah, no, I mean, it's. I don't think it's possible. Yeah. Do you want to ask the question? Oh, okay. You want to ask him? So we have students joining us remotely. We have. Let me just reiterate the question. So the question is whether or not if the gold standard is viable today, right? And then you mentioned Philip Bagus mentioning that, or some Austrian economists saying that it's viable. I just mentioned it right before you asked the question that, some economists, especially free market economists, they prefer anything over fiat money, so alternatives. But I don't think return to a gold standard is the best way to go. I think the gold around the world can't cover the dollars. It would be highly, highly deflationary. The value of the gold would surge drastically. Nobody wants to use the medium of exchange. Everybody wants to hold gold. Market activity declines. Unemployment will. I think it would be catastrophic going back to the gold standard.
I think he was asking about other alternatives.
Yeah, the other alternative, Shu, is that, as I mentioned, we have a pillar dedicated to it. I don't want to get into it now. And the other alternative is we need to find a currency that we're not at the mercy of governments inflating it, nor nature, the discovery of gold. Money, what is money? The true definition of money is just it's a measuring stick. It's like you have a measure, you measure height. What money does, it measures relative valuation, subjective valuation of consumers. That's the true definition of money. So I don't even think money should have an innate value. It's just a measuring, it's an accounting measure, okay? So all I'm saying is that, can we find an accounting measure that's neither inflationary nor deflationary? And my answer to you is yes. But I'm not gonna answer that question today, okay? It's coming up, I think it's pillar number 7 or 8. So in few weeks, I will, think about it. I want you to think about it. And when you join the Menger Forum, we can talk about it, about what the alternative is. But I need more time. It's not part of today's lecture. But there is a mechanism where we can generate a medium of exchange at the moment of action, right? When the transaction is taking place, that goes in tandem with market activity, right? So market activity increases, the medium of exchange increases with it. Market activity declines, medium of exchange declines. Is there such a technical way of, creating this correlation between market activity and medium of exchange? And the answer is yes. So we need to find an alternative. I don't want to go back to the gold standard. It's too much. If the price of gold goes up or goes down, then the price of millions of goods and services will go up and will go down. It creates distortions in the marketplace, misallocation of resources, So there is an alternative, and I don't think the gold is the alternative. I think we have the technology to produce a medium of exchange that aligns or goes in tandem with market activity. It's just the technology. That's what the medium of exchange is. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. What time is it in China?
6 o'clock in the morning.
In the morning. Wow. Okay. You look very fresh. You don't look sleepy. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.